I don't need to.
You'd be out a hell of a lot of credits if you did.
An FV215B.
Still one of the best tier 10 tanks, in my opinion, if you know how to play it.
It does side scrape really well.
Like a boss.
Like, hey, look, I can side scrape and still shoot around the corner.
Good luck pinning
They
me.
really should have fixed the weakness on the side.
I mean the two boxes?
Yeah.
The only weakness.
I mean, they fixed it on the superconductor and all.
Fuck that truck.
The carbon.
Not to mention I can shoot on the move and be accurate.
I wish I would have done the grind for that thing.
It's the first tier 10 I ever bought.
I got stuck at Black Prince.
You and me both, stud.
I made sure to get it done. I had douche help me though.
Alright, so let's start with our super heavies. First two tanks that you're going to see a lot of this season is going to be Type 5 and Mouse. The reason being is Himmelsdorf is always a popular map and usually has very good landing tournaments. If we're going to be busy in landing tournaments, those are tanks that we need to have a lot of and we are going to be using. So let's talk about how to be effective in them. Type 5 actually has a fair amount of armor, but it has a couple of glaring weak points. The two glaring weak points that I am referring to, I don't want you guys to shoot it, but that hatch there.
And the angle's directly under my gun.
Yup.
Directly under your gun?
And that one there.
On the hole.
If I was firing gold,
okay.
that would have been an easy pen for my tank. And
This one right here.
that would have been only 311 penetrations.
Yes.
IS-7s can make that punch. WZ-111-5As can make the punch through both of those if you are dealing with them frontally. And then, like he said, the angles right underneath his gun are a great place to penetrate through. If you get the side of his turret, you're going to get some nice easy penetrations. If he is angled off a corner, then these two little shoulders, as long as they're flat, are nice penetrations as well. I'm shooting AP rounds to make sure that I'm not penetrating. So I'll shoot the other shoulder here as well to make sure that those have bullet holes / dents in them so that you can see what I'm talking about. The Capula will also give you penetrations, but that's a much tougher target to hit because it's actually slightly angled in an upwards direction, so that little slit is literally what you have to get into if you want to pin that. If you have a bit of a downward angle, there's an angle just up above the gun in his turret. If you get the downward angle, that's very weak in the armor department. But I wouldn't count on that. The lower glacis is a no-go for a Type 5. Don't shoot him in the lower glacis.
Showing pen.
You also have a
gold
really
around.
big pen though.
You have a 705A. That gun is not typical as far as pen for the rest of the tanks.
317 pen's all it's got.
The but the difference is the angle that you're sitting at. You're on a downhill slope.
Be.
Flattened it out.
Yep. Because normally there's a little bit of a slant to that, so normally you wouldn't want to shoot that. Of course, if you get around him, side shots, always, for days. If you shoot directly underneath the turret in the middle of that tank, his ammo rack is usually right around in that middle of the rivet row. So if you are shooting around in there, you might find his ammo rack. And then
On the side?
Yeah.
What did you say, the third rivet in the middle?
In the middle of the rivet rows, between the two rivet rows. There's two. Rivet rows. So
I'm gonna
that's
shoot him with HE to mark it. It won't hurt him.
Ammo.
Right there.
Yep.
Can I mark him now?
No.
Anti-American.
Alright, so let's talk about the role of the Type 5 Heavy. Type 5 Heavy has 2,900 hit points. It has a similar function to that of a mouse. It is a damage sponge, and with its HE, its job is to provide some area denial, as well as be able to punch into anything and everything. It's particularly good at killing tough targets, 110 E3s, or even mice, because they tend to have enough armor that most other tanks will struggle, especially if a mouse is moving. Where Type 5s become weak, and their weak points are really exposed and easy to deal with, is close quarters. The best thing for a Type 5 to do is if Abrams wanted to shoot and really support on this map, he's going to be aiming at targets at Alpha 4, and he's going to go up over the hill, use his height of his tank, maybe over here at this rock, and pop a shot over the top. And he's going to keep that distance from whatever he's trying to work on, because that drop in penetration over range is enough to make him bounce almost every single shot. Of course, something's going to be firing heat or some other round like that, at which point it's going to cause a lot more struggle, but if he's moving, now he's going to be making it a lot harder for them to hit. So that's something to consider if you get put into a Type 5 or you're going against a Type 5. If you want to kill it, you need to get in close. Which seems counterintuitive considering you're going, oh my god, that's a big gun! But he doesn't have DPM, so the worst thing that you can have happen to him is get pushed. So if a Type 5 has a faster opponent, let's say there was an Object 140 on the opposite side of the rock, the worst thing that that Type 5 can do is suck into this rock, because that Object 140 just got an easy pass to flank him. So Type 5s need to be planning for the fact that their turret traverse isn't all that particularly good. They're a slow tank. Their whole traverse is pretty bad too. So the trick for Type 5s is distance.
Yeah, 7's pretty low. Can I see if I can't do a fat girlfriend on him? See if that'll help at all. If I can get under his gun.
Yeah, you can try and get under his gun.
I doubt if I can. Okay. Yeah.
See if you can point your gun at his turret.
Okay, see if you can get it. Can you hit me, Abrams? Your left. You can get your gun down, can't you? Yeah, that ain't gonna work.
No.
All right.
Oh, yeah, IS-7s, I love it when they decide that tactic, because you can put it right to the top of them.
Yeah, then there's
it
not a
just
whole lot of
fucking
armor
wrecks 'em.
on the top of the turret.
Yeah.
Same with the FB.
Yep.
Mediums and lights, I'm fucking boned. I'll even just stop, get up, and go to the bathroom.
Yeah, that's exactly
Unless I
it.
have a wall I can mash them into and flip them.
But the thing is so that's the other thing. If he's going to get pushed, then he wants to have terrain close where he can back somebody up into it. If he gets caught out in the open, if he was out on that middle road and mediums and lights, oh, he's fucked. He is royally fucked. So that's something.
A lot of times they can keep rubbing you and do damage to you by just pushing you.
Oh yeah, the amount of armor that a mouse or a Type 5 has, and you're in a medium tank. Oh yeah. So medium tanks playing against something like that needed to keep enough distance that they can maneuver and keep out of that gun. But again, so the bottom line is, best way to kill a Type 5 is push it, because they want that distance. So best way to play a Type 5, keep your distance and try and stagger your reloads. Be playing off of crit hits, like, okay, this team is pushing, specifically put those shots in the lower hull of the tank so that it hits their tracks. Track them, make them burn a repair kit. Know that you usually have multiple Type 5s. Okay, one Type 5 just went ahead and put that shot into the tracks. Okay, he burned his kit. Bam, whack him with another one. So, let's talk about the HE rounds of that Type 5.
Sorry.
Normally, you'd have some pretty heavily armored tanks. If Abrams is good on the placement of his shot and he sticks it right underneath the dirt, well, let's use Devil for an example. He's going to do a hell of a lot of damage. Or even me. You can throw the shot at me, Abrams. I've got a super heavy spall liner. Try and throw it just in the dirt underneath my tank. So, he blasted both of my tracks, and he still got damage down in through the front, and he killed my driver. That's pretty good for shooting the dirt, and look at how close he was without getting the direct hit.
Here, let me fire one under there, HE on you.
I'd also.
I'm
like
not
to
sure
say
if you have
something.
the splash radius on your HE round that he does. Okay,
Good
222.
enough.
Yep. If you're not going to pen something with an AP round and you've got the HE, put it under the dirt. It's still DPM.
Also, if for some reason, if you have to fight a mouse face to face, and I don't know if a lot of people know this, if you're in a Type 5, shoot the cheeks. Don't, if you can. Especially the little slit there next to the gun.
Yep.
You will
Yeah, you want to shoot the
burn that
weakest.
tank
Yeah.
to the ground. I set them on fire all the time.
Yep.
I'm talking like 1 in 10 shots, which is pretty damn good
On
for
the cheek.
getting a fire. Yeah.
Yeah,
If
because
you're shooting a
you
big
guys
gauge
see
round.
you see
Yeah,
the
deck.
you see the vents up on top. There's that little armored plate that comes up on top just underneath my gun. That is the vents for my engine. If you shoot me in the cheeks with HE, you are doing damage to my engine, which I will get set on fire if it's a Type
Those-
5.
Oh, that slot's there.
Yeah,
That slot.
yep. That is the vents for my engine.
What, that little slot on the left-hand side?
No,
Right-hand
no, no,
side,
no.
well.
You see the U-shaped channel up on the hull of my tank, but it's down below my gun directly below it. There are vents back behind that. My engine is housed right in there.
Yeah, I set them things on fire all the time.
This is a forward engine tank.
User joined your channel.
Oh yeah, well, on the top of it, yeah, they got a little shield on it.
Yep.
Oh, where that little peg is? Like a little peg?
If you drive where I am, you can look down on it. They got a little protective ridge on the top of this thing there.
Yep.
You have to shoot down in there, just get run across.
No, HE fires and it actually counts as a sphere. So as long as it's within the sphere, so like that turret cheek, if it detonates, it's a downward as well as outward up on the point of impact.
Wanna try another one
So
on you?
that
That's
HE
only
round
good
then
stuff.
is spherically going down into a place where I have no armor on that vent and into my engine.
It's like
it is
throwing a
so
hand
Want me to
grenade.
fire another HE on you there?
Yeah, yeah, I'd like to see something.
So you fire basically on the mantlet, eh?
Yeah,
So you
you want to
have
put
a,
it down as low on the mantlet as possible.
Do you have a fire
one?
extinguisher in case he sets you on fire?
I do.
Do you see where I shot the mark?
Yeah.
Yeah, right in there. On the cheeks, on either side of it. I've shot them on both sides and set them on fire.
So just keep in mind, I have a super heavy spall liner on this tank for a reason.
Yeah.
So if you are a Type 5, let's talk about the equipment loadouts for those Type 5s, because this is a very similar equipment loadout that you would have in a mouse. Type 5s should be running a rammer. They should be running a super heavy spall liner because they are fantastic arty targets. And 2, they're getting into an HE battle. If you know you're going to get HE'd, run the spall liner, because it will keep you alive for so much longer and negate some shots that normally would have done damage. Now, obviously, that super heavy spall liner in low armored areas like the lower part of my tank when they shoot the dirt, they're still going to do the damage. But somebody fired a HE round and I ended up blocking 515 of
User
it
joined
because
your
it
channel.
did a complete bounce. So be running that rammer, be running those vents, and be running that super heavy spall liner, because it's going to help you. You may even consider trading one of them, like the vents, for a GLD, because Type 5 has a very long load time. Or aim time, I'm sorry, not load time. Alright, so that pretty much concludes the Type 5. Anybody have questions on the Type 5 before I start in on the mouse? No? Okay. So, let's talk about the mouse. Mouse has 3,000 hit points, and it is damage sponge. Similar equipment loadout to the Type 5, super heavy spall liner, rammer, and vents. Its APCR is sitting around 311 penetration. Up front and close and personal, it still can hold its own, and accuracy is pretty good. DPM's not bad at a 10.9 second reload. My advantage is that I can wiggle and I have lots of armor. My side armor's pretty good, unless they get a flat angle. And my frontal armor is good so long as I'm hiding my lower glacis and my turret cheeks. That means that if you are in a mouse, somebody go on the opposite side of the rock and go straight into the rock.
Yeah, those are the two biggest weak spots, is that lower one and the cheeks on, if you're firing gold.
Yes.
At them directly.
Think about this from a Clan Wars perspective. Guaranteed they're going to be firing gold.
Yep.
So, Stud, obviously you don't get to take the shot.
Oh.
So, an IS-7 over on that side, that would actually be perfect. So, go ahead and back out of there, Stud, so Dragon can take it.
Oh, I wanted to show you your weak point.
No. I can sit in this position and I can bounce shots from that IS-7 all day long, because if he's going to try and play that corner,
Unless he loads premium and shoots it into your gun mantlet.
all I have to do is angle my gun to about right about here.
Okay, I'll put trap one in the back of your turret.
Bounce. Solid bounce. If I wiggle, I make it that much harder. He fired, I would then bring my turret around, don't shoot. And then I would look for my weak point on the IS-7. So in this case, it's going to be a flat on the pike, considering he sucked in. And I'm going to take my shot, bang, and I'm going to go back in, and I'm going to bring my turret back over to the position, just about to the corner of that tank, on the mouse, just a little shy of it. And I'm going to bounce another shot. And once again, 515 from Super Conk, HE round, bounced it. That's the super heavy spall liner at work plus the armor. Bounced it again. Bounced it again. If a mouse is doing his job and using his armor, then he is... Ooh, somebody shot the dirt, didn't they?
And shoot.
Alright, so hold the shots.
Actually, I might kill you.
No, don't. So, that's one of the things that a mouse player needs to be thinking about. He needs to be thinking about, okay, what's the reload on the enemy? In the case of the Super Conk, I'm going to have one devil of a time working my shots with his reload, with how slow my tank is. My turret traverse is slow, that's a big disadvantage. Just very much like the E100 and the Type 5. So I really have to be planning those shots and get that bounce and immediately go, oh, he fired, and out I go, and I get the shot, and I suck back in. Just remember, it takes a lot of time to do that. But I can really conserve my hit points, and I can hold a corner if there's a couple mice for a long time, just due to the fact that if they all know what they're doing... Hold your fire, Dragon.
Sorry, I was actually trying to jump to my tank GT screen.
So... if you have mice providing that area denial, then you can really hold off a lot of numbers with that armor use and put those shots into an enemy tank. That's its general role, is a defensive purpose. Every once in a while, they will be put into a push strictly for their hit points, but any mouse that gets put into a push... should never, ever, ever, if I'm pushing on Stud's location, I should never drive straight at him. I am asking to get shot in the lower glacis. Just asking for it. I will lose all that health way too quickly. If I'm going to do a push on Stud, I have to angle my push to at least make it A, a smaller target, B, not every single tank is going to be able to penetrate with the angle. Stud will, but
I just shoot your turret.
if it was an Object 140, if I'm doing that push, I need to angle my turret and keep it angled until I'm ready to shoot. In this case, it's pretty much straight over the center of the hull. I'm looking for about that 45-degree angle on my turret to whatever it is I'm trying to bounce. It's a little bit more, but if you can imagine the 45, then that's where you want it. So mice should never be doing a straight forward charge on tanks. That will get them shot in a heartbeat. So think about that as in a mouse. You should be doing a zigzag. Okay, he fired, he's on reload, I need to change directions, and he's going to come off reload soon, and my direction has changed. Now I'm good.
But even with some pretty good zigzagging, that center lower
Yeah, you're still going to get hit by some
distance.
people. The point of a mouse is to minimize how much damage you're taking. You are supposed to be blocking and absorbing that DPM so that your team's DPM is greater, thereby reducing the enemy hit point pool and getting tanks out, as well as doing some damage yourself. That is your job in a mouse. That's its role. It's not a particularly good sniper. It's okay on a brawl so long as you know how to do the angles for the armor, but primarily it is sponge. Type 5s are also sponge when it comes to a push, but Type 5s can go charging straight in for the most part due to most people shooting the lower glaciers. But if you catch a charging Type 5, just whack him in those plates. The driver's hatch and the hatch on the right with the machine gun port, and go to town. Work his gun mantlet. And work those flats on his turret. Alright, so next, let's talk about the IS-7. IS-7 is one of the main tanks that you're going to see as far as heavies go in this game. Inside of Clan Wars Advances, it's a pretty universal tank. The IS-7's turret armor is stupid. Absolutely stupid. I am not going to penetrate that even with a gold round if I shoot that thing in the turret. Look at those capulas. Those capulas are recessed. You are not going to be able to penetrate it through the capula. You have a couple of options. You have the pike nose to work with if he is not doing a good job on going hull down. Then I can go for the lower glacis. But if he angles that lower glacis is still a bit of a challenge to deal with. If I get a downward angle, it makes that pike even easier to deal with. But IS-7s are a hold down tank. They are not particularly all that great at a push because their DPM tends to be slower. So IS-7s tend to be more of a defensive purpose where, oh, hey, I need to redirect a force, but it's still for a defensive purpose. IS-7's probably a good choice because then they're going to go look for that hold down position and start farming the ever-living bejesus out. So, for example, if an IS-7 is in this ditch over here and he's holding the hill, he can go hold down over here and he can shoot over the top of the hill despite the fact that he doesn't have a lot of gun depression, and he can farm whatever is on the other side or act as that sponge and deflect that damage. So the other trick for the IS-7s is if you're trying to kill one in its hold down position, you gotta push it. You either have to HE it like a Type 5, if you are a Type 5, or you have to push it. And most of the time, get past the gun. Get onto the sides, get onto the rear. That's where you want to be playing with the IS. You don't want to sit there and trade frontally with an IS-7.
And never be shy to track them. A lot of times you'll do damage actually when you track them, and
Yeah,
you're doing this.
those
when
front
you're trying to flank 'em.
sprockets usually will lead into a penetrating shot. Let's talk about its counterpart. I know we don't have one in here, but let's talk about the WZ-111-5A. Some other distinguishing differences: IS-7s fire an APCR round. Let's talk about heat rounds because the WZ-111 has better DPM and it fires a heat round. The damage is similar for the WZ-111-5A. However, that heat round basically acts like an HE round, except for it has penetrating capabilities. That HE round with that penetration capability goes inside of the tank after it has penetrated, if it penetrates, and then detonates. If it is not capable of penetrating the armor, it does nothing. It might as well be an APCR round that didn't pen, or a regular AP round that didn't pen at that point, because it does zip. So, that being said, with heat rounds, you actually want to be looking for flat points and making sure that you're not going to go into something that is considered spaced armor. HE rounds do poorly against spaced armor. Superconk has a lot of spaced armor on the front, those two plates on the side. So if I'm firing those heat rounds, I need to keep them off of those plates. I can hit just about anywhere else on that and get my penetration shot, but if I put those on those plates where that spaced armor is, it's not going through and I wasted a shot. The other place you don't want to stick a heat round, you don't want to stick it in anything's tracks. If you stick it in the tracks, it counts as spaced armor. Don't do it.
Wasting cash.
And you're wasting DPM, which means you're wasting your team's health points. So keep that in mind. APCR, sure, go ahead. Stick it through the tracks. But if you're firing that heat, just remember how that round works and go, okay, there are tanks that I can place this anywhere I want, like a Type 5, and others that I can't. The DPM is better on that WZ-111-5A. It's more maneuverable than the IS-7. It has a better power-to-weight ratio. Where it tends to be lacking is it tends to be lacking in the armor department. So if you're trying to hold a location with the WZ-111-5A, you're doing it wrong. Because that's an attacking tank. It is not a defensive tank like the IS-7. A lot of people think that they are interchangeable, but their roles are very different. So a better pairing for a WZ-111-5A would actually be mediums, like an Object 140. It will keep up better than the IS-7 will. IS-7s tend to get left in the dust. Gun handling characteristics are relatively about the same as far as the WZ-111-5A and the IS-7. It tends to be a little bit better, but not by much. Gun depression is an issue for both tanks. Weak points, the capulas on a WZ-111-5A are raised. You can go through the capulas pretty easy. Turret armor tends to be weaker than an IS-7, so you can get the occasional shot through the turret. And its hull is pretty easy to get through. So be aiming for the hull. WZ-111s have good hull traverse and good turret traverse, so outplaying them and driving around them is a harder thing to do. Alright, and that pretty much concludes the WZ-111-5A. So, let's talk about superconks. You'll see a lot of superconks. Maps like Prokhorovka, you see them a lot. They have specific areas. They have very good gun depression. The hull is incredibly weak on a superconk. That is one thing that a superconk, if he knows what he is doing, he will hide it. His turret is fairly strong. He has a couple of weak points. As you can see, that top area there by his scapula, where that shell went through, that's one of his weak points. But if he's moving, looking around, wiggling back and forth, that's pretty hard to shoot. You don't stand much of a chance on the gun mantlets left or right. So if you're in close quarters and he's in a hold down position, put the HE right on top of his turret, in between the middle of those two plates on the side of his tank, because there's very little armor on top of that, and you might get lucky and get a full damage shot out of it. The other place that he's weak, sit still for a minute there, Brax. The turret ring. There is a cast iron ring on the bottom of the turret and the bottom of the hull. I won't kill him. That area right there, you'll get full pens all day long. Very weak. Now, it's better for a close proximity to try and get through that, but if you are trying to take one out, it's a good place to take one out. They tend to be a little bit slow on the traverse speed, as well as turret traverse. So outplaying them is an option. Especially if you did put a shot through that turret ring and you damaged the turret.
Which you did.
Pretty easy to move past. Just work those hole shots on a super conch. Just remember that they have a very good DPM and they're relatively accurate. Stay out of those 2 plates because it counts as spaced armor if you're firing HE, or heat because those will absorb those rounds. That's where you don't want to put them. We'll go ahead and go back in, and then we will talk about the E100, 705A, Stir 103B, and 110E3. And then we'll pretty much call it a night for tonight's training, and we'll do another session tomorrow. Tomorrow's session will be more addressed towards mediums.
By the way, I wanted that kill shot on the slange.
Can you invite me into the training room, boss?
Sure thing.
Thank you. I got here late. Sorry. Real life.
Happens. I did record this, so you...
Yeah, I was watching it.
Oh, okay. Perfect.
I was watching the last half, I guess.
All right. Alright, E100 has a lot of similar characteristics to that of a mouse. The difference is that it has a heat round instead of APCR.
Yeah, do that reset, reinvite. I think I clicked right out.
Oh, we went in.
Nah, okay.
My stream is up, and you can still watch through the stream. That E100 has good armor, but that heat round and its DPM is actually a little bit better than that of a mouse. It has better alpha than a mouse too. So you're looking at about...
DPM is worse.
What's that?
I think
It's
the
worse?
DPM is worse, but I could check.
What's your reload, Wolf?
Ten seconds.
Yeah, so he's about a second faster than the mouse. So his DPM is a little bit better, marginally. But that heat round does a better alpha. He can get a high roll of about 750. So expect...
They basically at the exact same DPM.
Yeah. Well, no, his is higher because if he does the 600 regular,
Base, it's 40 different, so basically the same.
Because my base damage for a mouse is only 490.
I mean, like it's 2,250, and then the mouse is 200, or the 2,200.
Yeah. But he has those heat rounds, and I have a PCR. So something for an E100 to be considering is that he can't be going after those based armor targets like we talked about. His gun handling is still pretty good. He's still very slow. He's not going to be redirecting particularly anytime fast. But he does have some weak points. He shares a lot of the weak points that the mouse does. Lower Glacius is a pretty easy place to get in through a E100. So he should be thinking about angling his Lower Glacius just like he's doing. If I were trying to shoot him, instead of going green, now it's an orange, and now still orange and red. So now his side armor is still pretty good, so I would still struggle even there. I would have to literally go in between the wheels on his tracks if I wanted to even think about a side shot. Turret cheeks are relatively square. They aren't rounded like the mouse, but you can still go through the turret cheeks. But there's also a lovely light bar right up there on top of his tank. That is a green. That is a very easy place to penetrate an E100, is that light bar. Granted, it's only really good if you're in close quarters, but it's a great place to pen. That observer port, another great place to go through. You'll get a full pen and you'll get the crit hit, guaranteed every time.
How'd you hit that twice in a row?
Good crew. His turret ring is okay. It's actually rather flat. His turret itself is angled back, whereas that turret ring down on the base isn't a guaranteed pen for me with a regular AP round, but an APCR will put it through every time. So those are areas, if he is hiding his lower glacis, that's where you want to be shooting. But since his hull traverse and turret traverses are also slow like a mouse, go around him. Don't sit frontally and trade with an E100. Just go around. If you are the guy who does get stuck frontally shooting an E100, again, that light bar. Work that light bar.
I found those really hard to get.
If you're driving around the sides of it, shoot his drive wheel. You'll pin him every time.
Yep.
Whereas
And
on the
it
mouse,
tracks
it's
him.
armored.
Right. Because I have the drop-down sides. He doesn't.
Normally, I hit the mouse in the upper part of that because that's where the gas tanks are.
Yep.
Yep. So, let's then talk about... Did we lose our 705? We did lose our 705. Alright. So let's talk about the Sturv 103B. Sturv 103B is a support tank through and through. It can sit and spot for itself, but if you are alone in a Sturv, you don't want to be doing that for long periods, or you better be damn sure of where you're at, where the enemy's at, and how much camo you have. They are sneaky little bastards. Their camo rating is astronomical. Their DPM is fantastic, and so is their accuracy. They are brutal little tanks. If you're shooting an HE round at them, you see that grill on the front of that tank. If you put an HE shell in that grill, you have hit spaced armor. Your damage that you are going to do to that tank is significantly reduced.
If you do any.
If you do any.
Amazingly enough, I did. The other
You
thing
went
is,
through.
Well, you're only going to shoot at the tank from distance anyway.
Hopefully.
yeah,
Hopefully.
it also causes heat to just it disrupts heat shells
Yeah.
too.
So there is a capula. You see the little viewport in that tank? Right underneath that viewport is the capula. That is a weak point for that tank. It is very easy to penetrate. Now, if you're shooting from distance, obviously it's going to be pretty tough to hit, and lower glacis is still pretty easy to pen. However, if he starts aiming down towards the dirt in his siege mode, he can actually make that a much tougher target and change the angle and make it more likely that the tank is going to bounce. So, what that means for him, if he is at a ridge, he wants to work that ridge so that his gun is pointed down over the ridge to hide his hole.
Alright, let me go to the roof.
So just go ahead and point your tank down towards the dirt so that they can see the angle in siege mode.
Are you gonna hide behind those bushes there?
It doesn't really matter. He just needs to point towards the dirt so we can see the
There we go.
angle. All the way towards the dirt. Just look at the dirt.
Point down. Chocolate.
There you go.
There you go.
See how much that angle changes when he points that gun down in the dirt? All of a sudden, my green just turned to red. I can't pen through that lower glacis. What it does expose, you see those vents on top, on the left or the right of that tank? That's a good way to get into his engine for some crit hits. It also changes the angle on the front, so now the top of that tank is very exposed and easy to penetrate. So, a Sturv 103B, if he's in close quarters, always has to make a choice. Which do I give them? Do I give them the upper part of the tank, or do I give them the lower part of the tank? In the case of the upper is a much bigger target. Go through it. Go through the upper. If he's down like that, HE rounds, there's not a lot of armor up there. That Sturv relies on that angling. Put an HE round in it.
Or just 3 caliber.
Alright, and so basically that tends to be the Sturvs. Sturvs are very mobile, so they can get into positions quite quickly where they need to set up. That also means that they can relocate. So they can play Assault Tank Destroyer, kind of. So if a Sturvona 3B is going to play an assault mode, think of Prokhorovka. Think of that 1-2 line push. He can be following that front line of that push and repositioning DPM, 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 farm, 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 and then, oh, the line's moving further forward again. Okay, I can move a little bit further forward. All of a sudden, he's in the middle of the hill, and he's farming everything on the left-hand side of the 6 line. So that's one of the advantages of the Striv 103B with that mobility. The other advantage it offers him is if things are going south, he can get the hell out of Dodge. Whereas Stud, on the other hand, since that's a good segue, in the 110E3 is very slow. If he is going to get flanked, he is stuck. The other issue is he's very slow to traverse. In that case where the enemy's pushing, drive around a 110E3. Do not sit on his front. Even his lower glacis is really hard to get through. Why? Because it's kind of like a bubble. So it actually is angled armor, even though it is a lower glacis. There's a couple of weaker points off to the sides, over here, and on the opposite side. But the only other way that you're going to get through that thing frontally is if you have a hell of a lot of pen and you can get through the capula, but don't count on it. That's really inconsistent.
The bottom half.
It's like 350 pen, isn't it?
Yeah.
The top is like 350 or something.
It takes a fair amount. So, like I said, don't count on it.
The gun mantle.
No, do not. You will bounce every time. So, basically, if you are faced with a 110E3, get on its side. Make it turn, track it. If you track it and get on its side, it's done. Get behind it, it's done.
Then you can shoot the commander sats from behind.
Yep. Do not sit on the front end of a 110E3. So some of the other characteristics about the 110E3. 110E3 does not have a whole lot of accuracy. It tends to be inaccurate at long ranges, but it's a good medium range and close range tank as far as hitting its target. It has a lot of pen. It is very likely to pen what it's going to shoot at. So it's good for area denial. Its slow speed means that it doesn't redirect well, so it's probably not the tank that you want to be working for a push. 110E3 should not be by themselves. If it's by itself, it's going to get pushed around. So it's very much like the Type 5 in that distance is the friend for 110E3. It is not the up-close brawler. It is a scary tank, don't get me wrong, and you might get lucky and you might get some scrub who panics and backs away, but any team that's worth their salt is going to push it. Because you're doing yourself a disservice if you push in close with a 110E3. Anything else that needs to be added about that tank, Stud?
I don't think so.
Okay. And that pretty much covers all the tanks that we have here. I would go into the 215B183, but you're not very likely to see them in Clan Wars. Not many people have them anymore, and not many people use them in Clan Wars. It's not a meta tank. Doesn't mean it's not useful, but you won't see most clans use it. You're more likely to see a 110E5 more than you are to see a 215B.
Which is a shame.
And that pretty much ends. So everybody kill everybody else. I had to kill somebody before I died. I knew I was going to be a target.
Doggy PDX.
You weren't the first one. You didn't have everyone sitting behind you the entire time.
I did a lot of damage. We're still one thing.
Yeah,
I didn't know
you
that
did.
I didn't know that little pad right next to the big machine gun cupola was a weak point. It's very, it's very tiny, but it gave me green. I was like, seriously? And I hit it twice. I doubt I could do it if you were actually rocking
Who's that?
Yeah.
Stud?
studs.
Yeah.
The E3.
Yeah.
Okay, there's the machine gun.
Yep.
And there's this little tiny round bump that's right next to it. I pinned it twice.
I generally don't recommend that as a weak point for people to shoot at just because it's so small. And if they're rocking, moving at all, it's a wasted shot.
It's just funny that it's something I'll be shooting at from now on, though, at range, just for fun. So they can be like, how is he pinning me from the front?
Batamon, did you have anything to add to
User
this?
joined your channel.
Just know that with some of these tanks, you know, you may not see them. We may not use them.
Get him, Devin. Get him.
But worst case scenario, you just got armed with knowledge that you can take out into the pubbies and know, hey, I know there's a weak point on that tank, and you can exploit it.
What I liked about stuff was his ammo rack.
I'm sad. I was trying to.
For example, knowing
Trying to
that
flip
information, if you knew those weak points on a T95, T95s, a lot of them tend to get overconfident in their armor, and you can farm them for days and kill them quickly. And then they're like, what the hell happened, you hacker? And you're like, I exploited your weak points. Exploiting weak points and making sure that your shot goes in is helpful. It's very helpful.
Those premium rounds?
No, he's bouncing back and forth between premium. I'm just shooting.
okay.
Well, I'm shooting premium now. I'm out of regular.
Oh.
That was an auto extinguisher.
This devil's gonna be spending the most.
And
Oh.
Tip on the IS-7, that O-ring that's hanging on his back looks like a tramp stamp. Shoot it there twice. His auto extinguisher will go off once. A second time it won't.
Yep.
Weakness on the IS-7.
Mm-hmm.
Look, for a clan, we've narrowed it down. They're using the Type 5 and the mouse. They're really should only be brought for a city map or confirmed city map. They're too slow. The mouse has got a decent reload, but it's still too slow to use on a major field push.
Yeah, if you're using a Mauser Type 5 in Prokhorovka, you're doing it wrong.
Yeah.
Himmelsdorf is a ideal condition for mouse Type 5s, and even Paris is a good map for them.
Yeah, we use obviously the IS-7 Super Conch. We even have the 111 5A. We looked at the 703. Again, it would be a city tank along with the PZ, KB, KPV, FW, whatever it is, the Clan Wars version.
The rear turreted German.
Yeah, rear turreted
Panzer
German.
7.
It's got a decent gun, decent pen. Problem is, it's got the same weakness as the mouse, same weakness as the Super Conch, same weakness as the IS-7. It's slow. You shoot it in the front, through the front peak or flat plate, pin it all day long. You get a hold down though, it'll bounce for days. That's the thing with heavies. Any heavy has a weak front point. FE215B, if you do see them, I love mine. As you can see, even ammo racked, my reload was 13 seconds. What's the reload on an IS-7? 9?
Yeah, roughly.
You know, I face tugged him. It has two weaknesses on the front sides. If you can protect those, you're fine, along with the lower plate. Has a better turret traverse than just about any heavy. Believe it or not, that turret will whip around quickly like a medium. I was sitting there doing donuts where I'm spinning my whole tank and leaving my turret and letting off the spin, and as soon as the power transferred back to the turret, it whipped around quickly. So they're every heavy situational. We actually had a lot more fun playing with DDs. If you haven't gone over those, but that's what we had a lot of fun doing.
Tank destroyers will be another night. The only tank destroyers I covered was 110 E3 and Sturv.
Alright, well, just know that everybody, callers, if you guys have strats or certain maps you want, come talk to us, intelligence officers. We're not going to be pretty, we're not going to be polite, we will help you. And if we brutally tear your thing up and tell you it's shit, please don't take offense. That's all we're gonna, that's what Chibi and I and Hussars have talked about. Our job isn't to be nice to you guys, it's to help you get better.
Yep.
So
And
who's calling these advances tonight?
And that's part of the reason it's date night for the wife and I, so I will not be able to do it. I would really like to see Firewolf and Squid and Devil do some serious call-in here before Clan War starts. Cell, I know you've got a map that you want to work on your strat, so I would definitely like to make sure that you get the opportunity to try out your new strat. So if that map shows up, then we'll try and make sure you at least get to call that one.
Oh, I still need to look videos for it. No, it's work in progress.
Okay.
Hey, can we get a participation code?
Yes, I will repost that.
No. We don't do participation codes.
No.
You've got to show those stinking badges.
We don't do participation codes for Choco, that's it. The rest of us get one.
Alright, gentlemen, that's all I've got. As far as that goes, if anybody has any questions, I'm happy to answer them now before we adjourn, or come find me later if you go, hey, you know what, those concepts were great, but I still don't think I quite understand them. Can we platoon up and go see it in person in battle? I would be more than happy to do that too. My game plan as far as the training goes is that I'm going to continue through the rest of the tanks as far as roles go, so that everybody has a general understanding of what it is that you're facing on the battlefield, as well as what you're playing and how you need to be playing it. Because the bottom line is a caller is going to put you in a general area. It is your job, for example, let's take the IS-7. It is your job to understand that you need to be hull down. So it is your job when you are told, go here, to go, aha, I understand my role in my tank. I am supposed to go hold down and play area denial, defensive, support tank, and bounce shots while dealing it out. Okay, I should be using this little dip here to go hold down. I should be using this rock to go hold down. It is your job to play your tank. A caller is literally only putting you in a position that he thinks, hey, there's stuff over here, you can use those attributes of your tank. It relies on you doing so. Which is why I make the comment that I do. Callers just make the call. You guys are the ones who make it happen. But since I've been working on the training, like I said, come find me. If you have questions, I am more than happy. The intelligence officers are happy to go over this kind of information with you. There is no such thing as a stupid question. The only stupid question is the one you don't ask.
Amen to that.
And with that, have fun, gents.
Bye.
As you were.
Tell the
I
wife
got
we said
rum and I
hi.
got Coke.
Will do.
I'd tell her to tell her something else, but I don't think that would go very well.